Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. It's been a minute, but I do have some Power Virtual Agents content for you and going to be discussing the new unified experience that has recently reached public preview. Let's go. All right, so the new unified canvas is something that's been built up from the ground. So this is in public preview. There were some announcements last week about this, and I've gone ahead and taken it for a spin. So what are some of the things that you'll find in this new experience? So number one, Power Effects Editor. So this allows you to go ahead and insert Power Effects expressions. It also enables more advanced conditions within PVA. We've got, what may seem a simple feature, copy paste, but it is actually quite useful. Something that customers have been really looking for is the ability to copy and paste different actions and nodes and be able to move them around within your chatbot itself. Message variation, I'm going to touch on this in the demo. Just a way to make your bot a little bit more personalizable, a little bit more dynamic, and overall a pretty cool experience. We also have setting variables, and so this can be literal values or it can be those Power Effects expressions. You're going to see those basically enabled throughout the whole canvas, which is pretty cool. What's also awesome is that you can go ahead and, as it says, set a variable basically right in line if you want. This also allows you to reset a variable. And there's also a feature that I'll highlight a little bit in the demo that resets all variables. Pretty cool stuff. Naturally rich response messages. People have been dying for this feature, and it's awesome that it's now here. And there's a few different experiences that you can go ahead and take advantage of. Very simple things like just being able to embed an image as part of a response. Similarly with a video as well. And then we also have cards, basic cards, and also adaptive cards. So you've got full control over how you want to respond to your user. Another feature, I haven't had a chance to play with this a lot, but I can see the benefits, is Did You Mean? There was definitely different perspectives on how customers wanted this to behave. And one of the big things was they wanted to be able to control the message. Well, the PVA teams did something really intelligent. They essentially made this a topic. So you've got a tremendous amount of control over how you want to deal with Did You Mean? And last but not least, in the spirit of Fusion Dev, we also have a code editor. So naturally, drag and drop, very visual experience that you've come to love with PVA. It's still there. But also, if you want to be able to go ahead and go into the code behind and see exactly how the bot is laid out and be able to make changes, you're welcome to do so as well. So all that and much more in this video. I want to take a moment just to give a shout out to the PVA team, the product group here, and because I think this release is pretty amazing in terms of what's been done in a relatively short period of time. I think we always would love things sooner, but the reality is that making enterprise software at scale is hard. And so the PVA team is very customer feedback oriented. Many of the features released, I can easily associate to a customer ask. So for those of you that don't know, previously I was on the PowerCat team where we worked with a lot of large enterprise customers, and part of that role includes capturing feedback from our enterprise customers and passing it along to the PVA team, where the product group will then go ahead and prioritize it and then actually build it. And so many of these things are asks coming directly from customers, and it's great to see a product group just being able to respond to that. Now, the next point I really want to make is just around Fusion Dev. Fusion Dev is a little bit of a buzzworthy term these days. And I feel like PVA is probably one of the better product groups that's actually living this. Now, if you think about the lineage between PVA and Bot Framework, you do have essentially two different models historically. And really those two models have come together, both from a people perspective, organizationally, plus the tool itself. So I really feel like this team had a lot of courage to go after this specific vision, the ability to take a lot of those capabilities from the SDK and from Composer and being able to put it into a single unified tool that gives you high fidelity drag and drop experiences, but then also a code behind view as well. I think they're doing it right, they're doing it well, and I just want to give a shout out to that team. I think it's pretty cool to see where this all had come from. So just a little bit more about the public preview. There are docs. Here I'm highlighting the doc related to adaptive cards. I did refer to this yesterday when I was going ahead and putting together the demo itself, but do go ahead, check it out. I'll leave the link in the description of this video, but go ahead and take a look at the documentation. All right, so when you are using the public preview, there's a couple different modes in which you can enable it, essentially. So you've got the same URL where you access the tool itself, so powerva.microsoft.com, and you can go ahead and create a new chatbot, and when you do, you have two options, build for production, so that would be like the initial experience, and then we've got the new Try Unified Canvas preview. And so it is preview, so buyer beware. If you do have production needs, you probably should be in the production area itself, but definitely as you start to build new capabilities, or if you have a chatbot that might be a little bit further down the line, going ahead and using the new capabilities are compelling. And so that's something you're going to want to consider. Now, you can take an existing chatbot and convert this bot. Now, it is a copy, so you are left with the existing chatbot itself. So I think that's pretty important, gives you an opportunity to try things while still maintaining your initial chatbot. This is what I went ahead and did. I had an existing Contoso insurance chatbot, and I went ahead and copied and converted it. And so this is the experience for the existing chatbot. Now, it's not overly complex, but I go ahead and I want to provide insurance policy quotes. And so I'll ask for names and email addresses and the type of policy that you want, the number of bedrooms in this case, and I'll go ahead and calculate a quote for you, and I'll store that in Dataverse, and then I'll give you the ability to later come back and search for that specific quote. And as you can see, it's a functional bot. I think it's fairly representative of sort of the integration and sort of automation that you want included in a chatbot, but visually speaking, it's quite limited. And yes, I could have made it a little bit prettier by using Power Automate and Markdown to bold and highlight things, maybe include some images, but that was a lot of extra work. And so what I wanted to do for this video is take this existing chatbot and then use some of the new features to sort of make it a better, more immersive experience. Now, one of the things I did run into that I wanted to call out when migrating this existing chatbot was that I have that question about the type of property that you want to insure. Is it a single family home? Is it an apartment? Is it a townhouse? And naturally, you would select one of those options. It gets stored as a variable. Now, what I see has been changed is that this is now more of a typed choice set versus, or option set versus historically being stored as a string. So my previous Cloudflow had 4 input parameters, a property type, which was of type string, and when I went ahead and copied this bot, I ended up getting this error, and this is a design time error, just saying that input variable text is of incorrect type because this is an embedded option set now. And so this would sort of prevent me from running the bot. Now, PVA did a good job of flagging issues. So at the topic, it says, oh, you've got an error. That's what prompted me to look into it. I've got a very descriptive error here to say hey, I've got some sort of an issue. Now, in terms of how do I resolve it, what's kind of cool is that I can resolve it using one of the new features, and that new feature being Power Effects and being able to, create formulas that sort of leverage existing variables. And so I do have this, property type that's coming back. And what I can do is I can go ahead and just use a Power Effects expression of text to go ahead and convert this value into a text value that then I can go ahead and bind to my Cloudflow, and then I've got a successful call. So you might see some of those errors if you've used multiple choice options in your bot and you're using the output as an input to a Cloudflow. And so something that you can just easily remediate by using the formula node and a formula tab and then basically adding text around your property. So it's another one of those things that was lacking previous, where if you need some of those small extensibility options, you just didn't really have it before. Whereas now it's as simple as just adding a formula, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead, let's dive into a demo and see this new chatbot in action. Okay, let's go ahead and run the demo. So I've gone ahead and started out a new conversation, and here we've got the bot automatically responding. And what this is going to do is it's going to hit our greeting topic, as you can see. The first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is send a message. And when I send a message, I can go ahead and provide a various different types of outputs as part of that message itself. So here I can go ahead and provide an image, and then go ahead and provide the URL for the image and a title. And here we even have a carousel, which was something that would be quite difficult to do previously, but is now quite simple. So I'm going to go ahead and just provide that image just to give a little bit more of a visually appealing experience to my users. Now the other thing, like in the past, I could have done this through Flow, and I could use Markdown in order to achieve this. But once again, I'm adding some more latency because I have to make a call out to the Flow service to then return some Markdown. So this is now directly embedded, which is great to see. Now, the next thing that we're going to say is, hi, I'm a virtual agent, some just standard messages. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is provide this menu. And this menu is essentially just a series of cards. So we've got a basic card property. Then we've got the different types. We've got buttons. So I can provide get a quote as the text value, but the title is get a policy quote. And so what we want here is this text value should line up with one of our trigger phrases for our topic. So I'm going to have a topic around getting a quote where this phrase will be evaluated close or exactly the same as what we're expecting from a trigger itself. Now, it does get kind of interesting in terms of what you can go ahead and do with these buttons. Now, for me, I'm just going to send a message, but if you wanted to open a URL, make a call, send a hidden message, you've got some options there. So at this point, I'm going to now respond, and we're going to look into getting a policy quote. Now let's flip over to that specific topic, and I'll show you what that is all made of. So the first thing let's talk about is this message that's being sent. What we've got here is called message variation. You can see that we've got three different messages that can be one of three different messages that can actually be displayed. And so the idea here is that we want to have a little bit of randomization. We don't want our bot to feel overly mechanical, and we can go ahead and provide a list of essentially strings or messages that are sort of semantically equivalent but are just sort of different. And so if you have people that are returning back to your bot, you want it to feel a little bit more dynamic, this allows you to do it. This was something you could do in Bot Framework Composer, but once again, it was required you to jump into another tool and knowing how to sort of address and sort of use the tool in order to enable it itself. So here, that's a very cool feature. Then we're going to just say, I need to capture some additional information, and we're going to ask a question. So this is going to feel much like sort of the initial version of PVA. So this will look familiar. And then we're going to ask for the email address. Once again, we can go ahead and validate this information. So if I go ahead and provide something that isn't an email, I'm going to continue to be prompted. So we've got an email address in place, and then we're going to choose, we have a policy type of home, and we've got a single family home that we want to insure, and then we have 3 bedrooms. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call out to a Cloudflow. This is that existing Cloudflow I talked about before. This is where I need to use that expression. If I come into this specific text box, I'll have the ability to go ahead and provide a formula. What's kind of cool about this is I can resize it if need be and go ahead and do a simple conversion before we go ahead and send that message off. Now the response that we get back is that we've got an adaptive card, right? So once again, I could go in here, send a message, then choose that I want to send an adaptive card. I'm not going to do that here, and then I can go ahead and wire it up. Now this was a little bit sort of interesting in terms of how this all sort of works, and I would imagine this is something that will be looked at. It is preview after all. What I needed to do is I needed to go ahead and use the edit formula function as opposed to JSON. There's 2 modes here. Now, the next thing I had to do here, in order to sort of enable making this dynamic, because I want to use the values that are being returned from my Cloudflow in the payload itself here. So I need to make sure that this adaptive card metadata is kind of stringified. And that's what I've had to do here is I've gone in and used an online tool to remove all of the carriage return line feeds. I've then copied and pasted the adaptive card JSON and then gone into Notepad and then just did a replacement. For every essentially quotes, I've replaced it with 2 quotes. And then when it comes down to where I want to make things dynamic, I need to embed essentially a quote around 2 ampersands, and then I can go ahead and use kind of like IntelliSense here. So if I come back here, I've got variables that are scoped to my topic. So I can go ahead and type topic, then dot, and see all of the related attributes that I do have access to. In this case, I can use quote ID. Once I've gone ahead and done so, then I can save this and go ahead and call it. Now, one thing worth calling out here as well, this is a new feature. I didn't really need to use it here, but I was curious how it worked, is I can go ahead and set a variable now. This was something that you couldn't really do explicitly in the past. The only way to go ahead and set a variable was essentially through a flow action. And so this added some latency. Sometimes it forced you to do some things that felt a little bit artificial, where I would create a flow just to like create a variable, introducing some latency. I can now go ahead and set a variable directly here. The other nice thing is I can go ahead and override a variable as well. That was another challenge in the past, was that variables were immutable essentially. You'd have to create like a subsequent variable and then use it downstream. It got a little bit complicated to manage. Another thing that's kind of neat here is we've got topic management, clear all variables. So, maybe you are going through sort of a wizard-like experience and for some reason you need to start from the beginning. You can go ahead and clear all of those variables and then go to a specific step. Maybe it takes you back to a specific step as part of your conversation that allows you to then go ahead and sort of restart. That would have been very difficult to go ahead and perform in the past. So let's go ahead now. Let's just sort of pretend that we're done and we come back to our chatbot and we want to then do a quote lookup. Let's now find that. So I'm now in that specific topic. I need to provide a quote number. So that's what's being asked for here. Once again, we're going to use a Power Automate Cloudflow in order to go do this lookup. Now in this case, the input was string, so I never had to do any sort of manipulation around that data. And then once again, I'm going to go ahead and use an adaptive card. Now in this case, I'm using the exact same adaptive card that I showed you previously, but it just sort of shows that it's nice. You can go ahead and copy and paste it and reuse it in multiple locations. So here, I'm going to provide that quote number, and then we can go ahead and look it up. Lastly, I'll just say, and we'll go ahead and see the end of our conversation. And once again, we can use some rich media in order to go ahead and interact with our end user itself. So if we go to the goodbye topic here, once again, I've just gone ahead and added, in this case, a GIF. I found a Giphy, and I can go ahead and use that as the URL. And once again, add just a little bit more interactivity to the chatbot itself. So that concludes the demo. I didn't go through all of the features. We'll save that for some other upcoming videos itself. But I did want to just kind of compare and contrast, take an existing chatbot and show you some approaches that you can use to kind of make it more interactive and take advantage of some of these new capabilities. So thanks for checking out this video, and we'll see you again soon.